In just a few hours, Governor Newsom will speak out to Californians about where the Golden State is in 2022. Will Californians be paying attention, and what should they be listening for? For those answers, we turn to Fox 40's political analyst, Republican Tim Rosales, and Democrat Andrew Acosta. Gentlemen, good morning to you.
Good morning.
We'll get to state issues in just a minute because we've had some big national news this morning. I have you here, and given what the president did this morning, I have to ask you about the decision now to stop Russian oil imports because of that country's war on a sovereign Ukraine. Tim.
Well, certainly anything that the president can do to make life tougher on the Russians, I think, is a good thing. And certainly the international community is stepping up, and we see the president of Ukraine, who just gave a speech to British Parliament, is receiving a lot of support from around the world. So anything America can do on that end is good. And then the second part of that, in order to alleviate the burden on the American people, is obviously more American oil production and energy independence.
Andrew, did the president wait too long to do this?
Well, he'll always have critics, but I think at this point, who would have thought that Ukraine and Putin would be the rallying cry for bipartisanship in Washington, D.C., considering where we started with Ukraine and Trump.
Biden had very strong words to oil companies here about price gouging during this time. We know Congressman Garamendi believes this has already happened and has asked for a congressional investigation into it. Any chance we see a windfall profit tax proposal with those funds coming back around to benefit drivers? Andrew, what do you think?
Here in California, we've seen attorney generals over the years call for investigations into this exact issue, and nothing has ever, from my experience, nothing's ever come out of it. I know we're talking about the governor's state of the state, and one thing he's already proposed is a gas tax holiday, which, sort of did not fare well with Democratic leadership in the Capitol.
Tim, what's your thought about a windfall profit tax?
Well, I think it's a little bit of a red herring in that I think what America ought to do, and where Republicans can I think make some policy points, is talking about American energy independence or oil independence. We can produce oil in the United States cleaner and better than they can in Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, any of these bad acting countries that we tend to do business with. So I think that's where Republicans ought to go in terms of policy proposals, moving forward out of this.
Alrighty, now this speech, the State of the State, used to be the big policy announcement of the year from a governor. Things have kind of shifted to everyone perceiving policy from the allotments that the governor lays out in their State of the State proposal announcement. So do Californians really still need to be paying attention to what may be said tonight, Andrew?
Do they need to? I'm not sure. Will they? I doubt it. There's a lot going on. What's happening in Sacramento probably isn't top of mind for a lot of working Californians. So we'll see what comes out of the speech and what voters actually hear. But we're coming through COVID. I think voters are tired of what they're hearing out of Sacramento, and they're definitely more focused on national politics today than on what's happening in 5 o'clock in Sacramento.
Tim, is this going to be a blip on most Californians' radar?
Well, I think that, the real state of the state is people see it every day as they drive to work, or they look out their window and they see, what's going on. I think people, and Californians particularly, are very keenly aware of what the state of the affairs of California is. The question is, I think, whether or not Governor Newsom will offer some substantive solutions that are different than what he's done in the past. And if they really are aimed at some of the big issues and thinking about them in a different way. Certainly homelessness and crime are top on those lists, along with cost of living. I think those are probably the three biggest issues impacting Californians right now.
And speaking of the governor in the past, we were just looking at some video of him at Dodger Stadium, an empty Dodger Stadium last year, as he tried to emphasize California's losses from homelessness. He is going to be back in Sacramento, and tackling homelessness was actually the priority set forth by this governor in his 2020 State of the State. And then that whole of government focus was quickly eclipsed by the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. Last week, Newsom unveiled his Care Courts plan to help the unhoused population address some of the mental health issues that can play into being unsheltered. Tim, some of your fellow Republicans have criticized Newsom for not really doing anything on this issue. His project Room Key turned Home Key is also out there. So is that really a fair critique?
Well, you can see folks right now, if you're watching the Los Angeles mayor's race, which we might not be watching up here, but certainly in Los Angeles, you have candidates down there talking about moving people who are homeless and unhoused off of the streets and getting them into shelters and taking a little bit of a tougher approach and on the issue of homelessness. So I think that there is a lot of fracture, not just from Republicans, but I think from the public at large and candidates who are running for office in local major cities.
Andrew, how is Newsom doing on this issue? Why not make his latest plans a feature of his State of the State instead of releasing them early?
Well, I think you're going to hear a lot about it tonight. I mean, he released it early, as other governors have done, just as a teaser, but he also had big city mayors on board. And big city mayors are the ones who are feeling this much more than, county officials, because people know who the mayor of LA is and the mayor of Sacramento and the mayor of San Francisco. They're not as familiar with their county board members. So the big city mayors need this. They need Newsom to do something. Newsom's put a lot of money out there. And as Tim said, voters drive to work every day and they see, the problem getting worse, not better.
All righty, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this morning with all of your perspective. We appreciate you.
Thank you.